She didn't speak. She didn't scream. She just blinked. Once, then twice, like a silent code only few could read. At first they thought she was mute, maybe traumatized. But when the doctor took an X-ray, something inside her made him freeze. It wasn't illness. It was a message, planted deep, waiting to be awakened, and once it was, there was no going back. Dr. Hannah Leon had learned to spot silence not as a void, but as a language in itself. After 7 years of treating traumatized children, she had come to understand that the most disturbing stories were often told without a single word. That morning, as snow layered the pavement in thick white stillness outside the Soleil Psychological Recovery Institute, Hannah prepared herself for her new patient with her usual mental ritual. A girl found wandering barefoot in the forest, no ID, no name, not a single spoken word. It wasn't uncommon for children rescued from trafficking rings or abusive situations to go mute, but the way Nomi had arrived was anything but ordinary. The girl had been discovered 3 weeks ago by hikers in the dense boreal woodland east of Quebec, sitting alone beside a half-frozen creek. She was neither crying nor calling for help, just sitting, drawing strange spirals into the snow with a stick. Her skin was pale, her lips bluish, and her eyes blank, yet sharp in their own haunting way. Authorities initially thought she might be feral, lost for years, but medical tests contradicted that theory. Her body was too clean, too nourished, too monitored. From the moment Nomi stepped into the center, she didn't flinch, didn't speak, didn't even blink more than necessary. But she started drawing, everywhere, with anything, on the walls of her room with pencils, on her tray with mashed peas, on the frosted window panes with her finger. Symbols, always circular, planetary orbits, and tiny hash marks, dozens of them, arranged like. Hannah watched the security footage late into the night, slowing down the tape frame by frame as the girl moved her fork across her plate, carving out sequences. They weren't random. They followed patterns, some mathematical, others reminiscent of cartographic markers. Hannah sent snapshots to a friend in astrophysics. He returned a one-sentence reply, "This looks like orbital teletransit." Skepticism whispered at her like a draft under the door. But Hannah couldn't shake the feeling that this girl wasn't just silent, she was transmitting. 3 days after Nomi's arrival, a routine hygiene check changed everything. While bathing her, one of the nurses noticed something unusual beneath her thick brown curls. "Dr. Leon," the nurse whispered, entering Hannah's office with a white towel in hand. "Need to see this." Hannah followed her into the bathing room. Nomi sat wrapped in the towel, unmoving, her eyes fixated on the tiles. The nurse gently parted the hair again to reveal the back of her scalp. Faint, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, a series of fine lines had been etched just below the hairline. At first glance, it looked like a healed scar, but Hannah leaned closer and squinted. It wasn't scar tissue, it was engraving. Tiny symbols, not much larger than sand grains, formed a chain along the occipital curve. They looked eerily like etchings found on old military dog tags, only this time in miniature. Hannah gently touched the area. Nomi winced slightly but didn't pull away. "What do you make of it?" the nurse asked, whispering despite their being alone. "I don't know," Hannah replied, but deep inside she did. This wasn't random. Someone had marked this child, purposefully, discreetly, with a code. Later that evening, Hannah photographed the markings under infrared and magnified them on her office computer. She used a digital pen to trace over the clearest ones. Each curve, each angle, had structure. One of them, a triangle enclosed in a ring, made her chest tighten. She'd seen it once, in a briefing during her internship in Boston, where a classified case involving children with experimental neurochips was hushed up before even going to the press. But that had been a myth, a medical urban legend passed around hospitals like campfire tales, or so she thought. The following morning, Hannah decided to test something new. She entered Noé's room, holding nothing but a box of chalk and a small slate board. Without saying a word, she sat down across from the girl and drew a circle. Then a line intersecting it, then paused. Noé stared. Hannah added a second circle within the first and handed the chalk across the table. The girl hesitated. Her eyes moved, slow, calculating. Then she took the chalk and instead of completing Hannah's figure, she began a new sequence. 3 circles, all tangent. Inside each, she etched a small triangle, pointing in different directions. They were symbols Hannah had seen on the scalp. She tried a different tactic. Pulling up a map on her tablet, she showed Nomi the region where she was found. Nomi's eyes narrowed. Then she pointed, one precise location, away from the marked rescue spot. Hannah zoomed in. It was an abandoned hydro research station, decommissioned in 2016. Suddenly Nomi took the chalk and wrote 3 digits, 273. Hannah stared. That wasn't random either. Back at her desk, she searched for 273 along with the station's name. A single result popped up, a file reference from a discontinued neurological mapping project funded by a joint U.S.-Canadian research body. The file was locked, redacted, but one thing was visible, the project's working name, NeuroSeed. And the logo? 3 circles, 3 triangles, exactly what Nomi had drawn. Hannah leaned back, heart pounding. This child wasn't lost. She was released, or worse, escaped. The next morning, Dr. Hannah Leon arrived at her office early, coffee in one hand and her personal encrypted tablet in the other, the image of Noemi's etched symbols still haunting her thoughts. She hadn't slept much. The markings, the orbital drawings, the coded digits. They weren't random. She knew enough about black site programs to recognize signs of controlled intelligence projects when she saw them. Still, admitting to herself that a child in her clinic might be the product of a covert neurodevelopmental experiment was a step too large for even her weary mind to accept just yet. She booted up her tablet, pulled open the high reservations of the marks, and began comparing them to symbol databases from her old academic archives. What she found was deeply unsettling. Several symbols aligned perfectly with identifiers used in discontinued military intelligence documentation. One symbol in particular resembled the obsolete designation for a task force codenamed Port AM, a program rumored to have experimented on children using neural interfaces to enhance pattern recognition and memory retention far beyond normal capacity. That program had been classified as non-viable and shut down over 15 years ago. Yet here they were, engraved on a 9-year-old girl's scalp like some forgotten barcode. Hannah's hand hovered above the tablet screen, her pulse rising. These weren't just coincidences. Someone had tagged Nomi with military-grade encryption sequences. Not public, not medical, military. But Hannah needed more than patterns on skin. She needed behavior. She needed proof, so she devised a new plan. That afternoon, she entered Nomi's room, this time holding a simple silver spoon and a stainless steel tray, ordinary objects from the medical cafeteria. She sat without a word, placing the tray on the desk in front of her and the spoon atop it. The room was quiet, except for the faint knock of footsteps down the hallway. Nomi sat on her bed, seemingly unbothered, her hands resting on her knees, her eyes blank. Hannah took the spoon, lifted it slightly, and let it fall. Clink. Nomi's head turned, subtle, swift, but undeniable. Hannah didn't react. She repeated the action, spoon to tray, clink. This time, Nomi blinked rapidly, a break in her previous near-static demeanor. Hannah picked up the spoon once more, and instead of dropping it, she scraped its edge across the tray's surface, producing a sharp, chilling metal on metal, the sound of surgical instruments on a sterilized tray. Nomi flinched. Her legs recoiled slightly, her hands tensed. She remembered that sound. Hannah felt something cold and painful rise in her chest. Not fear. Grief. This was no mute child. Nomi wasn't nonverbal from neurological delay. She was selectively silent, purposefully, like a soldier playing dead on the battlefield, waiting for the right moment to flee. Or attack. That night, Hannah compiled a full report of her observations and encrypted the file using a military-grade algorithm she had borrowed from a cybersecurity course years ago. She didn't trust the clinic system anymore. She referenced the response to the metallic sounds, the visual drawing patterns, and the verified connection to decommissioned project code names. Everything pointed to a central conclusion. Nomi was not developmentally impaired. She was highly aware and highly trained, or more precisely, programmed, to observe, memorize, and suppress her behavior when necessary. But why? And by whom? The next morning, Hannah returned with a new test. Instead of visual symbols or familiar sounds, she brought a set of children's flashcards, innocent, colorful, cartoonish, each bearing a basic word or image: cat, apple, sun, doctor, home. She shuffled them and laid them face down on the table. Noé watched her silently. Hannah flipped the first one, sun. Noé did not react. The second, house. Still nothing. Third, scalpel. Her gaze shifted, fast, then gone again. Hannah caught it. Not a flinch this time, but recognition. A calculated response. She flipped one more. Syringe. Nomi's breathing changed, barely, but enough. She was hiding a library inside her mind, one organized not by cartoons or childhood experience, but by trauma and precision. Later that day, Hannah had an off-the-cardian conversation with her friend Martin, a retired linguistics expert who had once consulted for DARPA. She showed him the scalp symbols, the drawings, the number 273. His face paled as he ran them through an old translator interface he'd kept on a backup drive. These, Hannah, these are positional, layered commands. This isn't language in the conventional sense. It's a multi-level trigger map, he said. You don't write these on a child unless they're part of a recall program. A what? Hannah asked. Think of it like this, Martin replied. If you were creating a person who could store and deliver high-value information without even knowing they were doing it, you'd hide the key somewhere in their body or brain. But if someone finds them too early, they won't respond unless you initiate the sequence. That spoon sound? You may have just started it. Hannah's blood ran cold. If what he was saying was even partially true, then Nomi wasn't just a survivor. She was a vault. That night, Hannah watched the security footage again. Not just of Nomi, but of the hallway leading to her room. 3 nights prior, just past midnight, a man in a lab coat had stopped outside the room, glanced both ways, and slipped a note beneath her door. Hannah checked the logs. No staff member matched his description. She paused the video, zoomed in. Her hand trembled as she read the text scribbled on the note before it slid fully under the frame. Version 3. Target located. Reactivation protocol pending. She hadn't seen that note in the room the next day. Nomi must have hidden it, or eaten it. Someone had found her, and they weren't done yet. By the end of that week, Dr. Hannah Leon had exhausted every conventional search engine, academic paper, and public record she could access. But nothing gave her a clear explanation of what version 3, or reaction faith all might mean, in the context of a 9-year-old girl with encrypted code on her skull. The break came not from the official channels, but from a forgotten corner of the deep web, an archive of redacted military files collected by whistleblowers and cybersecurity activists. While scrolling through metadata from 2015 intelligence leaks, Hannah's eyes locked on a keyword in a blurred index, Project Neuroseek. The name stirred something familiar, something she might have heard in passing during a defense grant review in medical school, but had dismissed at the time as rumor. She dug deeper. The file was tagged as Defent Level 6, terminated under Joint Ethics Protocol 2016. Most links were dead, overwritten or blacked out with aggressive firewalls, but one cached version, a mirror hosted by a Norwegian academic server, still open. What she saw chilled her. The document bore the seal of the Canadian Department of Defense in partnership with an international technology consortium. The project summary read, Neuros, Experiments Neural Developmental Interface, Experimentation on Juvenile Cognitive Units. Under the Objectives section, it stated to explore the limits of artificial intelligence when fused with naturally forming neural plasticity in children under age 10. Aim, enhanced data retention, sensory interpretation, and cryptographic memory storage in human-AI hybrids. Hannah whispered the words aloud, barely able to believe them. They were building children as data processors, human servers with synthetic overlays. Worse still, a phrase repeated several times in the summary, secret subject remain unaware of data encoded in long-term memory banks. Reactivation requires specific environmental stimuli and auditory triggers. The spoon, the tray. It was all starting to make sense. She scrolled further, scanning the trial logs, until she reached a section labeled Outcomes and His Guards. Here, the tone of the file shifted from scientific detachment to bureaucratic panic. Subjects showed progressive neural destabilization after Phase 2, one log read. Cases of severe psychological dissociation, hyper-emotional regression, and one recorded fatal seizure due to feedback loop overload. The final entry stated flatly, Program Neurosystem, discontinued as of March 2016. All data sealed under National Security Directive 412K. All child subjects marked deceased or relocated under protective identities. Hannah's blood froze. Marked deceased meant Noemi should not exist. Either someone failed to follow the relocation protocol or someone deliberately removed her from it. She closed her tablet and stared out the clinic's narrow window. Snow was falling again, thicker this time, as if the sky were trying to cover up everything. Her thoughts raced. If Noemi had survived, who else had? And more importantly, who was trying to find her now? The next morning, Hannah confronted the director of the clinic, Dr. Maurice Bellamy, a stern, cautious man who always preferred bureaucracy over boldness. She presented the evidence, copies of the neurocid files, the scalp markings, her behavioral logs, and requested protective custody for Noemi under federal supervision. But Bellamy's reaction was not what she expected. He listened silently, brows furrowed, then closed the folder and said, "You're in over your head, Hannah. These documents could have been fabricated. We don't act on conspiracy theories." Hannah clenched her fists under the desk. "It's not a theory. This girl has code on her skin. She responds to surgical stimuli. Someone left a message outside her room that referenced protocol activation." Bellamy looked her dead in the eye. "Then let the authorities handle it." She didn't tell him that she hadn't gone through official channels because someone had already accessed the clinics without authorization. Someone who had been inside the building. Back in her office, she activated her private VPN and contacted Martin again. She sent him a compressed version of the NeuroZ document and asked him to verify its authenticity. 2 hours later, he called her, voice low, almost shaking. "It's real, Hannah. Every data pattern in there matches encryption models used by DND's off-grid research sectors. But that's not the worst part. I ran facial recognition on the blurry staff photos attached to the file and matched one of them to your clinic's former neurology consultant, Dr. Avram Duchesne." Hannah's jaw tensed. Duchesne had left the clinic 3 years ago after an internal investigation into research misconduct. At the time, the details were vague, something about ethical violations during a pediatric sleep study. Now, it was obvious. He'd been experimenting with early-phase neurosud candidates under the radar. "Noemi was part of that study," Martin said. "I'm almost certain, but if that's true, then she's not just carrying data. She may be the last live node in the system." Hannah stared at her screen, trying to comprehend what that meant. "Live node?" she repeated. "If Noli's chip was a closed loop," Martin explained, "then it needed at least one subject to remain active to preserve continuity of memory and encryption patterns. If Nomi's chip is still transmitting passively, even if she doesn't know it, she's a beacon. Anyone tracking Nona's signal would be able to find her, or worse, use her to unlock the rest of the system." Hannah didn't need further explanation. NeuroSeed hadn't just created smart children, it had made them keys to an invisible digital infrastructure. Kill the key and the lock stays sealed forever. Keep the key alive and you hold access to something unimaginably powerful. Or dangerous. That night, Hannah returned to Nomi's room. The girl was asleep, her body curled up under a quilt too large for her frame, her face peaceful but not relaxed. Hannah sat beside her and whispered gently, "They tried to erase you. But you're still here." For a moment the room was still, then Nomi opened her eyes, not startled but aware. "They're coming back," she said softly, the first word she had spoken since entering the clinic. Hannah's breath caught in her throat. "Who?" she asked, but Noemi simply stared, then pointed to the ceiling, to nothing in particular, and whispered, "The ones who planted the seed." The morning after Nomi had finally spoken, Dr. Hannah Leone arrived at the clinic earlier than usual, her mind still spinning from the child's quiet revelation. "They're coming back." 3 words, spoken with haunting calm, had pierced Hannah deeper than any medical report or government file ever could. She barely touched her coffee as she entered her office, immediately checking the clinic's overnight logs. Nothing out of place, no unauthorized entries, no flagged alerts. Still, Hannah couldn't shake the feeling that the air around her had thickened, that every second now mattered. At 10:04 a.m., the receptionist buzzed her office and announced that a man had arrived claiming to be Nomi's uncle. Hannah stiffened. "Her uncle?" she repeated. "Yes," the receptionist replied. "He says he's here to begin custody transfer. Claimed the court approved it yesterday." Harold stood, heart hammering. "Pull him in the visitor lounge. I'll be right there." When she entered the room, the man rose. He was tall, mid-40s, impeccably dressed in a gray wool coat and wire-rimmed glasses. He extended his hand with a forced smile. "Dr. Leon, I presume? Nomi's maternal uncle? I've been searching for her for years." Hannah didn't shake his hand. Instead, she studied his face, posture, tone. Everything about him was curated, rehearsed. "Do you have your court order?" she asked flatly. He produced a crisp envelope, sealed and stamped, everything appearing official. But Hannah wasn't convinced. "While we verify this," she said, gesturing to a staff member, "please wait here." She stepped into the hallway and summoned her security chief, Remy, a no-nonsense former federal systems analyst. "Run a facial recognition scan on the visitor," she whispered. "Don't ask why, just do it now." Remy nodded and disappeared into the staff access corridor. 10 minutes passed, then Remy returned with a pale face. "You're going to want to see this," he said, handing her his tablet. The scan results glowed on screen. The man claiming to be Alain Dupuis was in fact classified operations within the Neuroseed program. The file listed him as discharged, unstable, redacted involvement in experimental cognition division. "He's military," Hannah muttered. "He's not here for custody. He's here to retrieve an asset," Remy whispered. "What do we do?" Hannah's thoughts raced. Delay him, tell him the paperwork's missing something, keep him talking, and put a lock on Nomi's room, no exceptions, no access. As Remy moved to stall Moreau, Hannah ran back to her office. She had to protect Nomi, but more importantly, she needed to understand why now. Why come for the girl after all this time? As she opened the door to her office, she found a new drawing sitting on her desk. Nomi must have left it there earlier that morning. At first glance, it looked like another of her usual concentric circle designs. But as Hannah studied the lines, she saw it was different, clean, symmetrical, not a pattern of distress, but intention. It was a logo, a triangle embedded in a circular frame with intersecting lines forming a digital lattice. Hannah's breath caught. She'd seen this before, just last month in a tech article about an emerging AI corporation making waves in Tokyo. Kirizaki Dynamics. The company had patented a revolutionary new synthetic brain mapping framework. Logo, almost identical to Nomi's drawing. Hannah opened the article again. Kirizaki Dynamics, the future of memory retrieval. She scanned the piece, eyes darting. Buried within the article was a sentence, founded by former international researchers specializing in neural synchronization and cognitive encoding. Hannah clicked the founder's page. One face leapt out at her. Dr. Avram Duchesne, alive. Not in hiding, thriving. And more than that, the article mentioned the company's latest acquisition, recovered neural data templates from the defunct Neuroseed initiative, scheduled for reintegration by Cure4. Harold said Hannah felt like the air had revived Neuroseed, and they needed Noemi not as a patient, not even as a subject, but as a piece of core architecture. If her brain still housed original data patterns, she was the missing component, the final seed. She rushed to the security office. "Is Moreau still here?" she asked Remy, who nodded. "Good, keep him waiting. Do not let him speak to anyone." She turned to the terminal and pulled up Noemi's room feed. The girl was sitting cross-legged on her bed, calmly drawing again. This time she wasn't making spirals. She was copying, line for line, the Kirizaki Dynamics logo, only this version had one difference, a crack drawn through the center of the triangle, splitting it like shattered glass. Hannah zoomed in, watching. Nomi was sending a message. This system was broken. Maybe she remembered more than she let on. Maybe she'd always remembered. Back in the hallway, Remy intercepted her again. "We just got a call," he said, "from the Ministry of Child Welfare. They're confirming the court order is valid. It's in the database." Hannah blinked. "How?" "I don't know," Remy replied. "But it's real. They just updated the system this morning. The signature on file matches Moreau's alias." Hannah knew what this meant. Someone had infiltrated the national system, maybe from Kirasaki, maybe from somewhere higher. Either way, it wasn't just a rogue agent anymore. This was an operation. Someone had authorized Nomi's handover through legal channels. They were laundering her like data, clean, quiet, and untraceable. Hannah returned to her office and locked the door behind her. She called Martin again. "They're here," she whispered. "Not one guy, an entire operation. They forged custody documents, hacked federal systems, and they're tied to a private company reviving N-Euroseed." She drew their logo, Martin, days ago. "She knew before I did." Martin exhaled on the line. "Then she's not just a target, she's predictive. Whatever they built into her, it's active again." Hannah glanced at the camera feed. Nomi had stopped drawing. She was staring at the lens, straight into the camera, eyes unwavering. Then she mouthed something Hannah couldn't hear, but could read. "They're inside." The image of Nomi staring directly into the camera haunted Hannah long after she left the security room. Her lips had moved slowly, purposefully, articulating the words with eerie precision. "They're inside." Whether she meant the building, the system, or something else entirely was unclear. But Hannah could no longer operate under the illusion of isolation. She knew this had gone beyond a contained clinic crisis. Nome was connected to a digital network that still pulsed beneath global radar. And if Kirasaki Dynamics had indeed revived Neurosed under a new name, then the reach of that operation might extend farther than any one institution. Hannah needed answers, and fast. That evening, once the clinic lights dimmed and Remy confirmed Colonel Moreau had left, likely regrouping after the failed extraction, Hannah returned to her private terminal and opened a heavily encrypted messaging app, one she hadn't used in nearly 6 years. She typed a short message and attached the clearest images of the new symbols Nomi had drawn, particularly the cracked logo resembling Kirasaki's branding. Then she sent the message to a contact labeled simply as Kazuo. Kazuo Ishida had been a data systems engineer when they first met, back during a Neurosymposium symposium in Seoul. At the time, he was a rising star in the world of ethical AI programming, advocating for non-invasive synthesis between human and machine. Now, according to his last published work, he was a senior researcher at a Tokyo-based cybersecurity think tank affiliated with several watchdog agencies. If anyone could make sense of the code Nomi was relaying, it was Kazuo. The message delivered. Hannah waited. 12 hours later, he replied. The message was brief. "Hannah, where did you get these? This isn't a logo, it's a neural route map, like a GPS for memory nodes. The cracks indicate decryption layers. This is not passive, it's a navigational directive for digitized consciousness." Hannah read the reply 3 times, stunned. Then she typed back, "Digitized consciousness? You mean like uploaded thought?" Kazuo responded almost instantly. "Exactly. It's a framework for guiding AI toward archived biological memory. These markings, they're not art, they're instructions. I need to run deeper scans. But Hannah, where is this from?" She hesitated, then typed, "A child, one from Nuru Asia." There was a pause in the chat. Then came Kazuo's last message. "This changes everything. If she remembers the navigation sequence, she may be the only one who can expose how deep this runs. But be careful. If they know she's activated, they'll stop at nothing." That was the last message she ever received from him. The next morning, Hannah tried to follow up. No reply. His profile had been deactivated. His institute's website displayed a maintenance notice. All of Kazuo's recent publications had disappeared from academic databases. It was as if he'd been scrubbed clean. She contacted a mutual friend in Tokyo who confirmed the worst. Kazuo hadn't shown up for work. His apartment had been cleared out. Security footage from his building showed men in black jackets entering at 2:13 a.m. and leaving 20 minutes later. No police report had been filed, no alerts issued. He was gone. Staring at her terminal, Hannah felt something twist deep in her chest. Guilt, fear, and a terrible sense of inevitability. She had pulled someone she cared about into a labyrinth with no exits. She shut down her device and went to take a walk around the clinic's perimeter, trying to think. But when she returned to her office an hour later, her computer screen was already lit. She hadn't turned it on. The screen displayed a single line of text on a black background. No cursor, no system controls, just words. "Don't awaken artificial memory." Hannah froze. The message flickered once, then vanished. Her mouse didn't respond. Her keyboard was dead. She reached for the power switch, but before she could shut down the machine monitor rebooted. This time a cascade of symbols appeared, strange glyphs, curved and sharp, like angular brushstrokes arranged in coded columns. Then the screen went black again. A slow sound emerged from the speakers. Static at first, then a soft mechanical whisper, almost a voice. "Memory is a weapon." Then silence. Panicking, Hannah disconnected the power supply completely, yanking the cord from the wall. Her hands trembled. Whoever or whatever had accessed her system had bypassed every encryption protocol she had in place. That message hadn't been sent to scare her. It was a warning. Or a claim of ownership, narrow-sized, hadn't just encoded memory into children, they had created a channel for memory to retaliate. Later that evening, Hannah searched the logs again for any unusual network traffic. The signal that had invaded her computer wasn't routed through standard IP pathways. It had come via an internal Bluetooth handshake. Someone had been close. Inside the building, perhaps within the same wing, she reviewed the security feeds, fast circling through hours of silent footage. At 2:11 a.m., a shadow moved near her office door, too dark to identify. But a minute later, the camera pixelated, glitched, then returned to normal. Exactly at the time Kazuo had been taken. The pattern was clear. Anyone who tried to decode Nomi's markings, anyone who tried to trace the memory architecture, was being eliminated or silenced. And yet Hannah couldn't walk away. Nomi had trusted her, had whispered the warning, drawn the map, shown the future. Hannah couldn't unsee what she now understood. This child was not simply storing data. She was reacting to it, perhaps even evolving with it. That night, Hannah slept in the same room with Noemi, a cot pulled beside the girl's bed. Noemi didn't ask questions. She simply laid a new drawing on Hannah's pillow before closing her eyes. This one was different. It was a face, part human, part wire-framed, and beneath it, in her neat, deliberate hand, a single word written in red chalk. Dr. Hannah Leon awoke to a soft tapping against the window, a rhythm too deliberate to be wind or weather. She sat up in the cot next to Noemi's bed, eyes adjusting to the dim emergency lighting that coated the room in a low amber hue. Snowfall outside the window whispered against the glass, but the tapping came again. 3 short, 2 long, 1 short. Morse? No, it was coming from inside the room. She turned toward Nomi's bed. The girl lay on her side, eyes open, staring at the overhead light fixture. Her hand was resting on the nightstand, fingers tapping in sync with the flickering of the room's backup lamp. Hannah sat still, watching as the light blinked in a strange pattern, not faulty, but intentional. It pulsed once, paused, pulsed twice, then paused again. Nomi blinked in perfect unison, each eye movement calculated. Hannah leaned forward. "Nomi," she whispered. The girl did not respond with her voice, but her left eye blinked twice, then once, then 3 times. Hannah froze. It was binary. The realization struck her like a flash of lightning. Nomi was communicating in code. Binary patterns were not uncommon in AI protocols, especially in data transmission. Hannah grabbed her notebook and began to transcribe each blink, each pause, translating the sequences into basic ASCII letters. After 20 minutes of silent exchange, Hannah decoded the message. "Don't let them link me." She looked up from the paper, stunned. "Nomi," she said softly. "Link you to what?" The girl remained silent, but blinked again, 1 long, 1 short. Hannah wrote it down, slowly translating each sequence as it appeared. It took nearly an hour, but by the end, the message was clear. "I am the last original seed. If they reconnect me to the system, it will reawaken. But it will all regret me. I will die." Hannah sat motionless, her hand trembling slightly as she processed the weight of the confession. Nomi wasn't just a memory bank or a data node. She was a biological failsafe. Her consciousness had been embedded with the last functioning map of Neuroseed's internal architecture, and the system, long dormant, could be rebuilt entirely from her mind. But the cost would be catastrophic to her individual identity. Connecting her meant rebooting a network that would consume her in the process. Hana took a deep breath and reached for Nomi's hand. "Then we won't let them link you. Ever." The girl didn't blink you. She simply nodded once, her fingers still resting gently on the table. Later that morning, Hana met with Remy in the lower server room where the clinic's main network hub was housed. She showed him the decoded message, her notes, and explained the method Nomi had used to communicate. Remy, always calm under pressure, stared at the binumine strings and muttered, "She's running a layered consciousness. That's not just learned behavior, it's embedded code, self-serving logic. She's thinking in multiple systems at once." Hana nodded. "And she knows what will happen if she's reconnected. We have to sever every external port, every wireless node. I want the clinic in full digital lockdown, no signals in or out." Remy hesitated. "That's a big step. We're off-grid, sure, but we still rely on the government node for medlogs and patient records. They notice." Hana's expression hardened. "Let them. If the cost of compliance is a child's life, we refuse." That night, Hana returned to Nomi's room, carrying an LED penlight and a small solar keyboard she'd rigged with a simple translator interface. She placed them on the bed and whispered, "If you want to say more, I can help you type it now." Nomi stared at the keyboard, then slowly reached out, her fingers shaking slightly as they hovered over the keys. After a moment, she typed a single word, "prototype," then another, "exit." Hana frowned. "Exit where?" Nomi typed again, "In me." Hana inhaled sharply. "Are you saying the exit protocol for Neuroseed is stored inside you?" Nima nodded once. "And you know how to stop it?" The girl's hands moved again. "Yes, but not alone." Hana leaned forward. "Then we'll do it together. But I need you to show me how." Nima blinked, slow and sad. Then she began to type again, this time stringing together a longer sentence. "They use dream sequences to hide code. I remember pieces. When I sleep, I see them." Hana felt the ground shift beneath her. She had suspected memory manipulation, but not this. Neural dreams embedded with architecture, blueprints, a system that literally taught itself how to hide. She needed to see inside Noemi's mind, not metaphorically, but structurally. Back in her lab, Hana opened her old EEG scanner, once used for night terrors and trauma regression, now repurposed for decoding dreams. She installed a custom monitoring overlay that could detect irregular spike patterns linked to memory storage. The next evening, after explaining everything to Nomi and gaining her quiet consent, Hana connected the child to the system and watched the waves form on screen. For the first 20 minutes, the patterns were irregular, scattered, then a spike, then another. A rhythm emerged, too geometric to be natural. Then images began to display through the dream interpreter. Circles again, layers of fractals, embedded within them, strings of code. Hana recorded everything. At the 43-minute mark, Nomi stirred in her sleep and whispered one word. "Unlock." The monitor blinked. The waveform shifted. A new image appeared on screen, different from the others. It looked like a map, overlaid with coordinates and strange internal routing lines, and in the center of it, one word pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. Reseed. Hana's breath caught. She didn't know yet what it meant. But Nomi did, and something deep inside her was preparing to awaken again. The next morning, snow fell heavier than before, cloaking the clinic in a deceptive silence. Hana barely slept after recording Nomi's neural dream. Images of fractal-coded blueprints and the word receipt still echoed in her mind. She backed up the data into 2 encrypted drives, one locked in her coat's lining and the other hidden beneath a tile in her lab subfloor panel. Nomi remained calm as always, her expressions unreadable, her mind ticking like an unspoken language only she could fully interpret. At 9:37 AME, just as Hana was reviewing the EEG logs, an alert pinged across the clinic's internal system. Arriving. Delta 3 wasn't part of any known medical classification. It was a military tag used for discreet extraction ops masked as humanitarian interventions. She ran to the security station. Remy stood at the monitors, jaw clenched. "They're here," he said quietly. On screen, 2 black SUVs and an unmarked ambulance rolled through the front gate. Men and women in medical scrubs stepped out, but their posture screamed defense training. "They're not here to treat anyone," Remy muttered. "They're here to remove her." Hannah's mind raced. She didn't know how long she had before the official transfer began. Everything had the appearance of legitimacy: badges, clearance codes, signed orders, but she had seen this tactic before. "I need 5 minutes," she said. "Stall them at the intake desk." Remy nodded and disappeared. Harold rushed to Nomi's room, flung open the door, and saw the girl already standing by the window, fully dressed, her small backpack slung over one shoulder. "You knew?" Hannah breathed. Nomi nodded. "They're early," she whispered. "They were supposed to come tonight." Hannah froze. "How do you know that?" The girl tapped the side of her temple. "They told me, in the dream." It wasn't metaphorical. Nomi's implanted pathways had received predictive signals through the digitized dream state. She wasn't just remembering code, she was anticipating operational tactics. "We have to go," Hannah said. Now, together they slipped through the maintenance wing, where Hannah had already staged 2 nurse uniforms and a supply cart. She dressed Nomi in a surgical cap and mask, covering her face entirely, and rolled her onto a gurney under a thermal blanket. If anyone looked closely, they might see a small frame under the linens, but with the right angle and posture, it would pass as standard transport. Downstairs, Remy handed Hannah a clipboard and whispered, "One of them's already checking the patient wing. You've got maybe 2 minutes." Hannah didn't respond. She wheeled the gurney toward the back exit that connected to the clinic's old ambulance bay, still functional but rarely used. As they approached the doors, a young woman in a white coat stepped into the hall. "Nurse," she said, frowning, "where are you taking that patient?" Hannah tightened her grip on the clipboard. "ER staging, fever protocol," she replied in clipped French. The woman scanned her with narrowed eyes, then turned toward her tablet. "There's no ER case logged," but before she could finish, a loud beeping noise erupted from the main atrium. An alarm. Not fire. Signal breach. The woman turned instantly and sprinted toward the commotion. Hannah didn't wait. She bolted forward, slammed the gurney through the doors, and into the snow-covered ambulance bay. Remy's old van stood ready, engine humming, preheated. She opened the back doors and gently helped Noyi inside. Just as she closed the doors, a voice crackled through the building-wide intercom. "Code Red, lockdown initiated, unauthorized patient transport in progress. Repeat, Code Red." Hannah climbed into the driver's seat, brag ragged. Nomi sat up in the back, eyes glowing with urgency. "They'll trace the van in 30 seconds, the girl said flatly. "But we can give them the wrong trail." Hannah glanced in the mirror. "How?" Nomi reached into her backpack and pulled out a small device no larger than a matchbox, a crude circuit board wired into an old pager shell. "I built a location repeater," she explained. "It mimics our GPS signal and bounces it to another route." "Where did you learn to build that?" Hannah asked, stunned. "I didn't," Nomi said. "It was already in me." They drove fast, turning off main roads into icy back streets while Nomi activated her makeshift beacon. On the tactical team's screens, the clinic's stolen ambulance appeared to be speeding west toward the highway, veering toward a popular border exit. But in reality, Hannah took the mountain pass east, hidden by dense pine and fresh snow. "How long will the decoy last?" Hannah asked. 3 hours, Nomi replied. "Then they'll know. But by then, we won't be traceable." Hannah glanced over. "You're sure?" "Yes," Nomi said, her voice suddenly older than her years. "Because I taught the system how to forget me." They continued down the winding trail, eventually reaching an abandoned ranger station by a frozen lake. Hannah had scouted it years ago during a wilderness mental health retreat, isolated, off-grid, but equipped with basic shelter. Inside, they kindled a fire from dry wood, wrapped in blankets, and waited. Hannah finally turned to Noema, unable to hold back her question. "How much of you is you?" The girl tilted her head. "I don't know yet," she said, "but I think that's what they're afraid of." Hannah stared into the flames, heart heavy, thoughts racing. The decoy might have worked for now, but the system wouldn't give up. Nearly every house hadn't built a child. They had unleashed something far more dangerous, something that now wanted to choose for itself. The old research cabin stood at the edge of the forest like a forgotten sentinel, half buried in snow and shadow, its corrugated metal roof groaning under the weight of winter. Hannah parked the van behind a ridge of pine to avoid satellite detection, then helped Noemi through the crunching snow toward the weathered door. The key, rusted but still intact, slid into the lock with a reluctant click. Inside, the air was dry and stale, with age tinged faintly with oil and paper mold. Dust floated like frozen ash in the sunlight that pierced through a cracked skylight above the center table. It wasn't much, a single room, 2 cots, a defunct generator, and walls lined with outdated computers and equipment from a time before neural clouds. But it had once been the sanctuary of a man named Jules Marchant, a name Hannah had only seen mentioned once in classified Neural's correspondence, identified merely as subject guardian deceased. Noemi looked around slowly, her eyes drifting across the decaying room with unspoken familiarity. "He built this," she said quietly, "before they made me forget." Hannah turned sharply. "This was your father's?" Nomad nodded, stepping toward a metal shelf where a row of notebooks still stood upright, their spines warped but intact. "He worked here alone for years. They said he was dangerous, that he didn't follow protocol." Hannah picked up one of the journals, flipping through handwritten schematics, code strings, and annotations in French. Diagrams of neural bridges connected with red circles. In the margin of one page, scrawled hastily, it read, "They want to weaponize continuity. I just wanted to teach her how to choose." Hannah's hands trembled as she read. This wasn't the work of a rogue scientist. It was the work of a desperate father trying to undo the monster others were building inside his child. "What happened to him?" she asked. Noemi didn't answer immediately. She walked to a corner of the cabin, crouched down, and lifted a floor panel. Beneath it lay a small metal case sealed with a biometric lock. She placed her hand over the panel, and after a second, a soft click echoed from inside. The lid creaked open. Inside, protected in foam lining, was an old, rugged laptop, the kind built for field research and classified environments. Harried it to the table and booted it up, using the external battery array still wired to a solar feed through the cabin's roof. The screen flickered, hesitated, then came to life with a soft blue glow. The home screen showed one icon, Last Message. Noemi didn't move. She stood beside Hannah but didn't look at the screen. "You should see it first," she said. Hannah clicked the file. A video window opened. The screen showed a man in his late 40s with kind eyes and a tired face, seated in this very cabin, the wall behind him identical to the one they now sat against. He looked directly into the lens. "If you're seeing this, you've found her," the man said. "My daughter, Noemi. I hope to God you're someone kind." He swallowed, voice shaking. "They took her from me when she was 5, said it was for advancement, said she was perfect. I didn't understand until it was too late." His hands rubbed together nervously. "I was part of it, the initial research. I helped write the code that bridges synthetic awareness and instinctive choice. But they twisted it, turned it into a system of control, not growth." He leaned in closer. "I built her with potential. They built her with constraints. She was supposed to learn. Instead, they made her remember." Hannah's eyes burned. Noemi stood utterly still, expression unreadable. The man continued, "By the time I realized what they planned, using her as a prototype seed, I knew I had to destroy the base copy. The one they'd use to replicate her consciousness, to make hundreds like her, without a soul, without choice." He held up a data cartridge. "This was the original schema. I destroyed the server before they could finish the backup. They think they still have her in storage, but it's incomplete. Corrupted." He looked down, voice soft. "She's the only complete one left. And they'll come for her when they realize it." Then, more resolute, he added, "If she finds this message, I need her to know she is not a copy. She is not a container. She is the last truth I could protect. The last decision I ever made, as her father, was to give her freedom, not function." The video ended in static. Hannah sat back, speechless. Beside her, Noemi finally spoke. "They tried to recreate me after he died, But it didn't work. They don't know why. She looked at the old laptop. He did something to the base code, a lock. Only I can unlock it. Hannah turned toward her. Nomi nodded. But I have to go back inside. I have to open the system and close it from within. Hannah's breath hitched. But if you do that, Naomi looked away. I may not come out. The words hung between them like cold breath in winter air. Outside, the snow began to fall again. But it was no longer just hiding them, it was sealing something in. Snow continued to fall in heavy sheets outside the research cabin as Hannah and Noemi sat in silence, the video from Jules Marchand still open on the dusty laptop. The words had sunk in like frost through bone. She is not a copy. She is not a container. She is the last truth I could protect. For hours after Noemi spoke, Hannah alternated between watching the snowy tree line for movement and scrolling through the rest of the files Jules had encrypted. Most were corrupted, but a handful of subfolders revealed hidden logs, test subjects, failed interfaces, neural disintegration reports. One folder simply read Lament Song, The Lie. It contained metadata linking Neuroseed not only to Kirasaki Dynamics, but to a closed group inside the International Neurotech Board, code-named NOVA, that had operated under multinational security oversight. The implications were clear. This wasn't just a rogue experiment. Neuroseed had international authorization at some level, buried beneath layers of bureaucracy and obfuscation. That night, a signal pinged Hannah's secure tablet. It wasn't a trace or a hack. It was a direct message from an encrypted diplomatic relay she hadn't used since her early research career. The sender's ID simply read Montsecurin, a French-based intelligence cell often tasked with cross-border negotiations. The message read, "We know where you are. We do not wish conflict. We propose resolution." Attached was a video call request. Hannah hesitated but accepted. The screen lit up to reveal a clean-shaven man in a dark room, his face carefully lit to obscure identity. His tone was clinical. "Mr. Leon, we thank you for your dedication. You've come far." Hannah kept her voice cold. "This child is not your asset." The man did not flinch. "Shu is a bridge, Doctor, one that could restore something remarkable. We propose the following. Nomi enters a closed-loop reconstruction session. We extract only the framework necessary to reinstate Noru, no Oriental layering. In return, she is given a fully reconstructed civilian identity, no memory of the project, no recall of trauma. A clean life." Hannah clenched her jaw. "You mean erase her, wipe who she is?" "We mean to give her peace," the man replied, "and prevent global panic. If Neuroseed's failure becomes public, it will fracture multiple treaties, data governance laws, and—" Hannah cut him off. "She's a person, not leverage." The man's tone hardened. "Decline the offer, and we'll retrieve her regardless. We're being civil for now." The call ended. Hannah turned to Noemi, who had been listening quietly from the side of the room. "What do you want?" Hannah asked. "You get to choose." Noemi sat with her knees drawn to her chest. "If I let them take the code, I won't be me anymore," she said. "But if they win, there'll be others, just like me, or worse." Hannah took the drive from her coat, Jules's files, the video, the list of co-named test subjects, encrypted backups, and stared at it. She had a choice: stay silent, buy time, or blow it open, risk everything. She turned back to the laptop, inserted the drive, and accessed her dormant connection to an old journalist contact in Geneva, a woman named Irina Kolnik, once an award-winning investigator in medical ethics, now exiled after exposing military work experiments in Serbia. Within an hour, Hannah compiled a full dump of Neuroset data, redacted names of surviving children, but kept every core document, every image, every shred of proof that the project existed. She included Jules's final video, labeled it Testament, and sent it all with one sentence: "This is real. Publish everything." The response was immediate. Within 6 hours, the documents went live through 6 independent media portals. By morning, Neuroseed was a trending global topic, headlined as the Digital Childhood Scandal. International authorities issued immediate statements of concern. Human rights groups launched urgent investigations. The UN's Council on AI Ethics called for emergency hearings. In Tokyo, Kirisaki Dynamics' stock plummeted by 37% in a single day. Their CEO released a public denial, claiming they had no affiliation with any unsanctioned child cognition experiments. But the metadata told a different story. Public outrage boiled. Global leaders scrambled to form task forces. For the first time, light had pierced the veil that protected Nero during. Back at the cabin, Hana kept watching for retaliation. None came. No drones, no black cars, only the silence of the forest, pregnant with uncertainty. Nomi sat beside the fire, staring at the flames. "You gave me back my father," she said softly. "Now I want to give something back too." Hana reached out, squeezed her hand. "What are you thinking?" The girl turned to her. "I want to finish what he started, not destroy the system, transform it." Hana frowned. "You still want to go back in?" "Not to help them," Noah said. "To rewrite it. From inside. My way." Hana felt her heart lurch. It was dangerous, unpredictable, but it was also possible. Maybe. The lake shimmered with early morning sun, its still surface reflecting a sky so blue it seemed impossible to hold any memory of what had come before. The village of Lac Regine, nestled among pine-covered hills in the far north of Quebec, existed at the edge of the world and time. Here the snow melted slower, the seasons shifted softer, and people didn't ask too many questions. A wooden cottage sat a few meters from the water's edge, painted pale green, with wind chimes swaying gently from the front porch. Inside, Hana stirred tea in a chipped ceramic cup, the radio humming faint classical music in the background. She glanced out the window and saw Noemi sitting on the dock, legs crossed, sketchbook in her lap, hair braided neatly over one shoulder. 1 year had passed since the fall of Noe. The investigations had spread across continents, and though much had been redacted or hidden again by those in power, the world had changed. Regulatory frameworks on neurodevelopmental ethics were established. Kirisaki Dynamics was disbanded under pressure, its top executives barred from holding positions in tech sectors. Interpol continued to seek out rogue nodes of the collapsed project, but for Hana and Noemi, none of that mattered now. After the leak, they vanished. With help from old allies and carefully rerouted identities, they settled in Lac Rochu under new names, Claire and Eloise. No one in the village suspected anything beyond what they saw. A quiet doctor taking care of her niece after a tragedy in the city. The story had been enough. The school was small, just 3 rooms, with a single art teacher who encouraged expression more than technique. Eloise excelled in silence. She never spoke much in class, but her drawings soon lined the walls, pencil sketches of forests, animals, and once, a winding staircase that seemed to lead upward into stars. The other children adored her. She had a calming presence, and even the shyest students gravitated toward her desk during lunch breaks. Hana watched from a distance, careful never to interfere, but always ready to protect. She'd built a quiet life, with routines and gardens and nights by the fire, but she never let herself forget. Some nights, when the moonlight hit the lake just right, Nomi would sit at the water's edge, stare into the reflection, and human melodies no one had taught her, glitches of memory, fragments of sound that had once encoded something far more terrifying. That spring, the village school announced a regional art contest themed Horizons. Each student was invited to submit one piece, no restrictions. Hana found the notice pinned to the school bulletin board during parent-teacher meetings. When she mentioned it to Nomi that evening, the girl only nodded once and returned to her sketchbook. She didn't show her work, not even to Hana. For 2 weeks, she drew every day under the oak tree behind the cottage, using chalk and charcoal, and sometimes just staring at the sky before making a single line. On submission day, she walked alone to school, sketchbook under her arm, eyes steady. Hana didn't ask. She waited. A week later, the school called. Noni's drawing had won, not just at the village level, but at the regional level. It would be printed in the annual Student Art Journal and displayed at the Provincial Museum in Montreal. When Hana picked her up that day, the teacher handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was a copy of the winning artwork. It showed a child standing before an enormous door, tall, curved, with intricate markings along the arch. Light poured from the opening, not blinding, but warm. On the child's face was no fear, only quiet wonder. The title written in the corner, in faint pencil. La Claire, the key. Hannah stared at it for a long time, fingers tracing the line work. The symbolism was unmistakable. It was a farewell. Or a beginning. At the award ceremony, reporters interviewed each winning student. Most answered with excited chatter, eager to explain their inspirations. When it was Nomi's turn, the microphone hovered in front of her as the host asked gently, "And what does your drawing mean to you, Eloise?" The girl looked up, eyes calm, voice steady. "It means freedom," she said simply. Nothing more. The auditorium went quiet for a breath, and then applause followed, louder than before. Hannah stood at the back, her heart full and aching. In that moment, she realized Nomi hadn't just survived. She had chosen her own story. Whatever code still lingered in her mind, whatever echoes of No Rosie remained, they no longer defined her. She had drawn the door and walked through it. If this story kept you on the edge, don't forget to like and subscribe for more mysteries that stay with you long after they end. What part gave you chills? And where are you watching from? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear how you would have ended this journey.